Welcome to Community Conversations with Louisville Pride. Louisville Pride brings communities together through collaboration, empowerment, and celebration. This program is part of our response to COVID-19. You can learn more about our work by visiting our website, louisvillepride.com. These community conversations happen live on Facebook at 1 o'clock or shortly thereafter on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Videos are posted on our website later for anybody who wants to watch them and doesn't have Facebook. Be sure to join us this Friday at 8 p.m. for the launch of UAW Local 862's Digital Pride, a virtual drag show featuring some of Louisville's finest performers and raising money for Louisville Pride and for the One Louisville COVID-19 Response Fund. This Thursday, we're going to be talking about community efforts to donate and make PPE, personal protective equipment, masks and gloves and things like that. But today's topic is racial disparity and COVID-19. And my guests are Kentucky State Representative Attica Scott and Shameka Parrish-Wright, who is the operations manager for the Bail Project, both of whom are longtime community activists and longtime friends of mine. I've met Attica a long time ago, but we got to know each other when I was running for state representative and I lost. And a couple years later, she won that same district, District 41, and she's been representing District 41 in the Kentucky State House since 2016. And Shameka, you've been at the Bail Project for a couple of years now. How long?
2 years now. It'll be 2 years next.
Okay, yeah, anything else you all want to share about yourselves before we jump into the conversation?
I just want to share with folks that I'm actually in Frankfurt, and we're going to be here apparently for a long day because we're voting slowly, and we have these slips that we're writing our votes on, and so I'm paying attention as well to the live stream for when we have to be called to vote. So I just want folks to know that. So I'm definitely focused in, but you may see me look away occasionally just to see how things are moving along on the House floor.
For me, I have a busy background. I have a big family, and this is week 2 of NTI. I also have my college student over here. You can't see her, and another one of my older children here. But professionally, I'm excited about this conversation and excited about you all holding space for this, because this is a really big issue, especially now as we see people who are currently being held pretrial, and we see more of those people charged with different, held, because of the charges, but also they should be out and being able to be with their families right now. So it's very busy for me. I'm on back-to-back national calls, but I'm always making myself available for conversations like this. And we have another one later with L-Surge, because this is so important for us to keep this as a real issue, because it's easy to forget about those who are incarcerated.
And for those who don't know, what is L-Surge?
I'm having a fight with my mute button. L-Surge is Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice. They are one of our community partners with the Bail Project Louisville. And they focus on talking to white people about their power, their role, their connections to, and their ability to end racism and racist practices. And so I really appreciate the work that they're doing. We check in, and I just tell them, do it. Talk to your people. You speak the language. And they've been taking that. That's one of the things that I learned from one of my mentors, which was Ann Braden. And a lot of the work that L-Surge is doing is mirrored off of her abolitionist work, her work against racist and political repression.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I know everything's a little bit crazy and everybody's busy. Hopefully we'll get through this without any technical difficulties. But this is a big conversation. There's a lot of parts of this, and we won't cover everything today, and we'll probably revisit this. We'll continue to revisit this issue. And once when you start talking about race, you're talking about every issue, and that's kind of a part of everything that's going on. But nobody wants to hear me talk. So, we're hearing a lot in the news about the disproportionate number of African Americans that are dying from COVID-19. Governor Beshear was talking about it in his press conference the other day. There's been several articles. It's getting a lot of attention. And the phrase that gets used a lot is underlying health disparities. So my first question is, what does that mean?
I can definitely chime in here. I want to start by saying that Louisville has done a really good job of, through the Center for Health Equity and other initiatives, to really try to address the disparities that exist by looking at inequities, institutional systemic barriers to good health. And so we don't see that disproportionality in COVID-19 deaths as we do at the state level. So at the state level, we see that disproportionality, and in part because the state has not done that work to address the institutional and systemic barriers to good health and to reduce those health disparities. And when we talk about disparities, we're talking about differences between groups of people with diseases like heart disease and lung disease and diabetes, those very issues that make people more susceptible to the COVID-19 and make them susceptible disproportionately.
I am a direct result of not getting the best health care. I got the best health care when I was pregnant. And when I wasn't pregnant, I didn't get a lot of tests and things. And it wasn't until I was actually working at the Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, and I was there with some of my white coworkers, and we would talk about our doctor visits, and they were getting tests and things that I was never asked to get. I did write a paper when I went to U of L on the attack on my uterus. I feel like one thing that the doctors did get right is trying to get me to sterilize myself for a long time, since I was 15, since I had my first child. Every time I gave birth, and I have 6 children, I was asked to do sterilization, some form of sterilization. So that part they got right, of trying to at least let me know about that. But it was strange when I was having my 6th child, and I was talking to my coworker at Kentuckians for the Commonwealth, and she said, when I went in and tried to ask for sterilization to get my tubes tied, is what we call it, she said that her doctor refused to do it and said that she was too young to do it. She was well in her 20s, about to be 30. And she knew she didn't want children, and she didn't get the same response as I got. I said, well, they even wait till I'm drugged up on medications and ask me over and over again. But also I had an underlying heart issue that I didn't discover until I was 29. And my father had it, his mother had it, his mother's mother had it, and they all have succumbed to it in their 50s. And so, so that goes on, that I got the best health care that I could get or as a Black woman when I was pregnant. And when I wasn't pregnant, I didn't get the testing. There was no way, there was no other indicators. And so my condition sprang up on me when my heart actually failed. And so now I'm all these years later, I'm on my 3rd pacemaker. So I know exactly what that's like. I know how to be more aggressive at my doctor's appointments. I know how to ask. I noticed that even on my report, just a general checkup, my practitioner put that I was a smoker. She just assumed that because of my heart condition, which she didn't look into. And she would, every time I would go to her, she would add medications. And every time I go to my cardiologist, he would say, why is she adding these medications? You're not here because of high blood pressure. You're not here because of high cholesterol. You actually have an inherited heart condition. You have heart disease that's progressive, but it didn't come from those things. But there was that natural assumption, and she was a younger person, but it was still that natural assumption that I was a smoker. And I had to go through a great deal to get that removed from my medical record. That's the other thing too. When these assumptions are made, it's put on your record. And then when you go in and ask for testing, you almost have to lie to get those ultrasounds. You almost have to lie to get them to do an MRI. Because if you just say, this is what I'm feeling and this is happening, you have to make it seem as bad as possible to get the testing that other people just get. And that's from a personal standpoint. Now, in this work that I do, I see it all the time. I see people who are incarcerated not getting the medications, even in or out of jail. They're not getting the health care and the medications that they need. And people are just dumping more and more medications on, to the point where most of us take lisinopril in certain communities. and that's a high blood pressure medication, because that's the first thing that most people get on. A lot of us are on metformin, which is a diabetes medication and also used for other things around asthma and other things because it has a steroid and stuff in it. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I take that too, but not a lot of research into why are you only prescribing these certain things to folks, you know. And so anyway, there's a lot of disparities. I'm thankful that when I was homeless, I got to go to the health center, and I had a doctor, my cardiologist, who I'm still with today, decided to donate his time on Saturdays to people like me who didn't have health care but were homeless. And then when I was able to get on my feet and get a job, I was able to still keep that cardiologist when I got health care. And so that's who I'm able to continue to see. And I think we have to treat our doctors, our good doctors, like we do our good mechanics, because we need the ones that are going to talk to us, that are going to be really honest with us and open. And we need them that look like us too, to understand that my symptoms are not just this other thing, that they need to be looked into.
Environmental factors play a role as well, right? I mean, in West Louisville, where of course, if we're talking about the African-American population in Louisville, we're talking largely, but not exclusively, about West Louisville. There's Rubber Town, there's the different factories and things like that. And so if I'm not mistaken, there's larger, disproportionate levels of asthma and respiratory issues, which is obviously going to be a factor with COVID. Is that true?
That's so true. I mean, you know, when I was on Louisville Metro Council, I represented the entire of what's called Rubber Town, from the Southwest to the West. And that's 19 chemical companies that were polluting the environment, the air, the soil, the water. And so you're exactly correct that that air pollution is something that impacts people who live around those chemical companies, and it makes it more likely that they're going to have higher rates of cancer and lung disease and upper respiratory issues. I mean, I saw it in my own family with my uncle, who died and had multiple forms of cancer when he died. So those issues are real, and they can be mitigated. So when we talk about health inequities, those are issues that we can address through policy, through public policy. We have to have the political will to do that.
Oh, I appreciate that, and I really want Representative Scott to go first. And I do like people who are native Louisvillians to talk about that. And Mike, that's why I supported your campaign, and that's why I always support Representative Scott in whatever endeavor she has to do, because I know she's bringing what's best for the people. And I remember being with her along with REACT, and I got introduced to REACT through Ebony Neal Cochran, who has been constantly working, that whole group has been working to push our city for better policies along with those chemical companies that Representative Scott has spoke about. And a lot of our elected officials aren't willing to speak about them because those chemical companies provide jobs. And I get that, but it's at the cost of the healthcare of the residents that live in those communities. And I know this as a transplant. So I moved here when I was 25, pregnant with my 4th child. And I will tell you, the 3 children that I had in Ohio, they didn't have any issues at birth or after birth with breathing or anything. The 3 children that I had in Louisville, Kentucky, all have respiratory issues. One had RSV when she was born. One still has chronic asthma. The other ones have seasonal asthma, and all of them have allergies. And they all have ailments that none of my 3 kids that were born in Ohio, 100 miles away. I mean, it is a little more hilly there, but it's 100 miles away. And you can see the health disparities and the differences in the children that I've had here. So the 3 that I've had here continue to have ongoing health issues. And when I went to the doctor and I explained that to them, they said, yeah, it's where you're living. That's why we have so many ear, nose, and throat specialists. That's why we have all these places with dialysis and all that. He said, because it's where you live. I'm sorry to tell you that. And he was like, you are an exact example, because you see the difference at home. And I really, really do. And so, and I will tell you, we moved to Miami for 2 years. And when we were there, no issues at all, no breathing issues. My youngest son didn't have any seizures, because he has seizures as a result of being born premature, but also being born with all these chemicals and everything in his system. We lived right at 37th and Dorhoffner in the West End when he was born, and he had seizures up until 5. We moved to Miami. He didn't have any seizures. We moved back here in 2014. He had 3 seizures back to back. so I know it's directly related. No, I don't need data to show me because my family lives it every day. Like Representative Scott, I was with her when her aunt and uncle passed and had all these health issues. I see it every day on the ground. So I really appreciate her giving that policy aspect. I appreciate the Center for Health Equity for what they do, but it's also important to know that there's all these stories on the ground where folks are dealing with this every day.
And I think there's been some progress. Certainly not, there's a lot more to do, but groups like REACT and groups and organizations like the Center for Health Equity are making progress, as people like to say, moving the needle. I don't know where the needle is and why it needs to be moved, but they're moving it. Also, if anybody has any questions, anybody's watching, I'm keeping an eye on the Facebook comments. So if you want to ask a question or anything, go ahead and put it in there and we'll get to it. Hopefully, if I can manage 2 or 3 screens at the same time. One of the things going on right now is that, essential workers are still going to work. A lot of service industry, a lot of retail, especially grocery stores and places like that. A lot of these folks, they don't have paid sick leave. There's been some emergency measures, but they don't have the same quality health plans and paid leave. And a lot of folks are probably on the bus and things like that. And that's going to, does that put them at greater risk? Do we need to think about public transportation and employment policies as part of the health picture?
We have to. That's our responsibility. And I say that knowing that TARC's headquarters is in District 41 on Broadway. And I get it that people are being forced to work right now, and that they have to be able to get to work. And I also understand that we cannot put the health of our bus drivers at risk either. So it's such a difficult situation to be in. And I say that as a mom of 2 kids who are essential workers. My son is a supervisor at a fast food restaurant, so he's got to be there, especially when people call in. My daughter's a pharmacy tech, and she recently had 7 days on without PPE. And I worry about them. It makes me anxious. It makes me nervous. And I know that because there are essential workers that we absolutely have to have who also rely on public transportation, we've got to figure out how do we make sure that we keep our drivers as safe as possible. And if we're not able to do that, then we're going to have to reevaluate what we mean by essential. Because in some cases, essential could mean what we want to have, not necessarily what we need to have. So we have to have that conversation about needs and wants and how we make sure that we're keeping everyone healthy and safe.
I echo everything she said. My older daughters are all delivery drivers, and I worry about them every day. I worry about my grandkids. Even on a bigger level, a lot of people contact us and we're sharing masks. My mother is making masks. We're sharing all the equipment that we got. There's these mutual aid groups that are popping up, which I really celebrate them doing that, because that's the people. I'm one of those ones that, yes, the government has its role, but we also have our role as citizens. It's our rent that we pay for the life that we live. We support and we help each other as much as we can. So as I'm trying to get people out of jail, I also realize that they're coming out, and some of them want a job as an essential worker so that they can come out and get their lives back together. And then there's also essential workers who are out here, even in our fast food restaurants. And like Representative Scott says, we have to reevaluate what's essential, what's not. We all have become so spoiled to the way things are. And it wasn't until my child was abroad that I learned how much that we actually take for granted. And I learned how much that we're not ready for any natural disasters. We're not ready. I mean, we see what happened in Detroit, and I really am thankful for social media, because we wouldn't necessarily know this man's story, but he's a Detroit bus driver. He had just made a video that a woman got on her sneezing. He had no protection. He died as a result of wherever he got it from. He died from COVID-19. And then they had a big protest about it. And then they had to change it to where the fares were free. and that people get on the bus from the rear of the bus, and you have bus drivers taping shower curtains up to protect themselves. And so that's where your job has failed you. That's the problem when we don't have unions and we don't have support for people. Well, the bus drivers do have a union, but they don't have people who are ready to take action right then. We spend too much time in bureaucracy that people are dying and people are contracting this virus, and they're not protected at all. So I think we have a job as a city, we have a job as community members to step in and do whatever we need to do as soon as we need to do it. And we can't just stay all in talks. We can't just have meetings while people are dying. And I, like our mayor, once our mayor's wife was diagnosed, that our mayor has been in isolation. And that is a life of privilege as well that many can have, to say, like even myself, I'm in my basement, but I'm able to work from my basement. And I do not take that for granted. My husband still goes out to work. My daughters still go out to work. So as those of us who are able to make policy change, to get in there and do something or do some direct aid, we have to act now or it's going to be worse for us.
And to kind of follow up on that, I mean, this whole situation is really showing us a lot of the stress points in our society, our economy. You know, what is the overall impact that you mentioned? Being able to isolate yourself is a, you know, there's privilege involved in that. What's the impact of poverty on health? And that's a big question. I've got some specific questions after that. So, you know, I don't want to get too, like, you know, that's a very, very big question. So in a nutshell, maybe, what's the impact of poverty on health?
Before I respond, I just had to go off screen to cast a vote. Did that remove my video when I did that?
You're back on.
Yeah, you just went black. Your screen went black and your name was up there.
Okay, well that might happen because we're in the midst of voting remotely, so I had to text in my vote. So I just wanted to check. Gosh, that's a huge question, Mike, and it has so many layers because, as Shameka said, she's so right. We are so ill prepared for this we were so ill prepared for this pandemic. We are ill prepared, as she said, for any natural disasters. I mean, we can't even get clean water to Flint, Michigan. We can't even get clean water to places right here in Kentucky. And so poverty definitely impacts both our response to and the ability of people to be able to make it through this pandemic that we find ourselves in, whether it's the crisis around housing and we're telling people to stay home, but what does that mean when you have no home? And whether or not, if you're not an essential worker and you're at home now without a regular paycheck, without that financial stability, it's highly unlikely you have money saved, because if you're living in poverty or you're low income or a low wealth, right? Low wealth, people can make a halfway decent salary and still be low wealth. So those are the kinds of issues that are impacting people in reality right now that we have to think about. That's why in Jefferson County, our school system had to put out a call for help to get Chromebooks to students so they could have these NTI days, so that they could be able to continue their education while they were at home, because we do have both an economic divide, we do have health disparities, and we have a divide in who has access to quality education because of the resources and tools that they have at home. So we have to continue to be real and honest and direct about addressing poverty and not just talk about it. I mean, the Poor People's Campaign have been putting the issue of poverty front and center for years now, and going to the beds of government to demand policy change. We have to wake up with COVID-19 and no longer be comfortable in what we have when others go without, and instead say, yes, we have to have local policy action. Yes, we have to have state policy action. No essential workers should be working right now for less than $15 an hour, but the reality is they are. and we're still making demands on them and their time. We're still expecting them to put their health at risk. And then we have the audacity to call them heroes because they're making less than $15 an hour and still providing for us every single day. That's disgusting. It's appalling. And I'm sitting right here in the People's House in Frankfort, Kentucky, where this legislative body has refused to take action to do something like raise the minimum wage. So there's so much more work to do. And yes, when we think about centering poverty in this conversation around COVID-19, it is definitely real.
Yeah, huge question. And thank you, Representative Scott, for taking a chunk of that, everything that I was thinking. I will add that today is Tuesday. And if you know me, you know I believe in my Tupac Tuesday. And one thing Tupac would say is they got money for wars, but they can't feed the poor. And that is definitely what we're seeing. And I always want to lift that up because we know poverty is not a crime. That's what I say in my Bail Project work. Poverty is not a crime. Freedom should be free, because those are the things that our country was built on, that it was supposed to be built on. And I like to tell people that I know that this conversation is about the racial disparities, but also you have to factor in poverty is at the root of that. But I'm also hopeful because I feel like poverty is something that we can physically attack right now in our lifetimes. And I feel like the racial disparities are something that we're going to have to continue to work on forever. And we might not see the fruit of it. None of us. I'm 43 and I still won't see the fruit of it, but that art bends towards freedom, it bends towards justice, that is a real thing. But I think that that's why a lot of people are attracted to our Bail Project work, because it feels tangible. It feels like I can get in there and do something just as well as I can cook a meal and go take it to someone. I can contribute and help get someone out pre-trial. And I think that that's why people are attracted to it, because it feels tangible. It feels like something we could do something about. I feel that way about poverty, which I tell people, like, yes, I'm always going to fight against racism and political repression. I'm always going to be out there whenever I'm needed. But I feel like my mission now is to work on issues of poverty, because those issues not only separate us, but they connect us, and they help. And that's something that you can tell someone. You could tell someone, you can explain poverty in a way that they can feel like they can take action and do something about. So that's what I try to make sure any organization that I'm connected to, anything that I do is connected to poverty, because I grew up poor. And even though I'm in a better place now, being married and a husband that's working and I'm working, I know what that's like to have that rug pulled out from under you. I know that there are poor people with doctor's degrees, with double masters, who served our country, and that's where they're at, and they're on the street right now. So it does take all of us to take action. Poverty is not a crime. And there's a hashtag that says your health is your wealth that I've been sharing, because it's really true. We think about, I need cash and I need this money, but I actually need my health. I need my health to be able to be right here with you all and have this conversation. And also my health is the reason why we had to volunteer on who's going to continue to pay bills, because I'm more susceptible, because I have heart disease, that if I get COVID, it would impact me differently. So as a team, we came together, and two of our team members volunteered, and they looked at their lives and they said, well, I'm pretty much in decent health. And Shameka, you shouldn't go, So, I think that happens at every level. So I really do believe that poverty, the way we dismantle poverty, is working together and being really and taking action. Like Representative Scott says, we can't just sit there. We got to support groups like Poor People's Campaign. We got to support the groups that are actually out there doing the thing. And when it comes to philanthropy, because I know this is Proud Foundation, you see a lot of people, we're getting a different level of philanthropy, and because they want to be with their aid. They want to fly that aid over to Haiti with it, because there's been so many people saying, I'll take your money and do the right thing, and it doesn't happen that way. So I think that fighting poverty is also a way that we can make it a philanthropic mission for all of our young stars and our young millionaires who don't understand where they fit in it, but want to take action and do something. So I think it's our job, that are development people that are in organizations, to find ways to help them use that energy. This is not the time to pull away from gifts and donations. I heard somebody tell me that on a call, that they were told we shouldn't be asking the foundations and the donors for money right now. Oh, hell yeah, this is the time where they need to be given, because they help create some of this mess. And I know that you set up your foundations to kind of clean your slate a little bit. It's not done. This is the time where they need to be showing up and giving more, because that's what really, our president wants to open things back up. that's what really opened things back up, because guess who gives more? People like me, people like us on this call, and people who earn less than us are the ones who give the most. So this is the time where we don't let up on them. No, this is where you put your money where your mouth is.
And I would just add to that, if I might, I would just add that we also need to be looking at who's making the decisions at these foundations, because I got the list of members who are part of the One Louisville funding body, and from what I can tell, none of them are from none of them live in West Louisville. And so, you know, that just makes me think about who has the ability to make decisions about where financial support goes, and whose voices get lifted up, and who gets included in decision making. And the only way to really address what Mike started out with, which is these health disparities and through addressing health inequity, is if the people who are most directly impacted are part of the decision making. So that has to change as well.
And just because I was in these some recent conversations with One Louisville, I will want to say some things that they got right is the application process, because too much, like even myself, I was like, what if things get bad and I need some food help? And then you go look at the one that they have through the city, where you go through the neighborhood place, and there's like a litany of stuff, and then you got to have all this proof. And I mean, like in a time like now, people don't have all of that, you know. So I do appreciate One Louisville looking at it from that lens and having a short form. I will tell you that we just got approved for a grant to help provide emergency housing, cell phones. I know people are like, cell phone. Cell phone is a privilege, because now that our public libraries are closed, those people who would go there to even apply for wraparound services, you need internet now. You need to be able to call somebody. They need to be able to call you back and tell you if you're approved or if you need to provide more information. So we applied to get to have an emergency housing. So some of the people who are being released that the governor's order helps, they are held up because they don't have a place to go. So my thing is that we need to be working with the hotel industry. I know that they're laying off a great deal of people, and seeing if they can help us block off rooms that folks can go to, and because some of them have to go straight into quarantine for 2 weeks. That's why I'm saying quarantine is a privilege. Everybody can't do that. I mean, even those folks who are couch surfing, you know, now that the stimulus money is coming, guess what's going to happen? Oh, you just got some stimulus money, Johnny? You can't save that. You got to help give, because you're right here on my couch right now. So anyway, I will say that I appreciate their application process, and I appreciate them following up with us really quick. I know that I'm a part of a national, and I have like a CFO and people to get our paperwork together. Some organizations don't have that. They don't have somebody who keeps their taxes up, or their bookkeepers volunteer. So we need to make these programs and these resources accessible to people on all levels. And there's organizations who are doing amazing work, but can't get it together to apply for these funding, because it requires things that they don't have. So I will say that I commend One Louisville for doing that, and not just because we got granted. Even if we didn't get granted, I appreciated the short form, because that was really, really helpful. Even though I have a team that does that work for me, I know what it's like to be in development. I know what it's like to raise money for groups, and that is challenging. And so you got a lot of groups out here who qualify for funding but won't even apply because of the process and the paperwork that they need, as well as individuals. We had a call with the Urban League, and she said that was one of the things that they were raising up with the city, is saying, you got this money. I hear that $1.73 billion is supposed to be coming through to Kentucky for COVID response, and then $143 million is supposed to be dispersed through with Jefferson County and through our city. And then the thing is, after that, you're right, Representative Scott, who's making those decisions to make sure that that money actually get to these working bodies that are getting things done? And so that is a really big thing, and we have to follow the money. You know, I've been telling you to follow the money we've been saying that for years, but now it's even more important with this response, and with folks need to know that it's out there. So I've been emailing pastors, I've been emailing small business groups, I've been emailing people and saying, hey, check this out. Let me know if I can help you apply. You know, I have a little bit of experience in that, but it is really challenging.
I want to move back to JCPS real quick. Well, 2 points. We're talking about a lot of things. One of the things that Representative Scott mentioned is people can be low wealth, kind of independent of your income. And I believe the figure is something like 50% of Americans don't have $500 in the bank or available to help with an emergency. And all of a sudden, we've all hit that. And I think the thing that compounds it is we're all hitting it at the same time, because, okay, I might not have $500, but I know people who have a little bit of money to help me out. But if all of us are in the same boat, then we're really kind of, this crisis is just kind of exponentially compounding. And part of this is when, you mentioned the Chromebooks for JCPS, but they had to think very seriously about how do they feed the children who are only getting hot quality meals when they go to school. And, that's been a sort of a creeping problem that we've accepted, that our school system has a primary role of feeding children. And that's not necessarily, that's not a bad thing, but that's not the purpose of the school system, right? But we've just sort of accepted that that's part of their role. So when we have to call school off for public health, there's a really real problem there of how do we feed people. Tobin asked a question here that I want to read off. Are you familiar with current JCPS efforts to mitigate disparities in learning for Louisville's K-12 students, given this NTI, non-traditional instruction period? So are you familiar with the efforts to mitigate the disparities, and what would you like to see happen to help bridge the divide between students who don't have the internet technology access that some of their peers do? Anybody want to take that one?
That's really that's a Shameka question, because my youngest graduated just last year, so not quite a year yet that she graduated from JCPS. But of course, I'm a member of the House Standing Committee on Education here in Frankfurt, so I'm definitely passionate about public education. And I will say that JCPS in recent years has done a much better job than it ever did when I was a student in JCPS, trying to address disparities, of trying to look at the needs of the whole child. And that's why, like you said, Mike, feeding students is one of their first and top priorities, because the reality is many students go home to a place where they don't have food to eat. So the school is the place where they go and get their meals. That's why you have, amazing organizations that provide them food to take home over the weekend. So I would say that JCPS has been taking some steps to try to address the lack of internet access, for example, and really working with the city on Wi-Fi issues, and making sure that there are hotspots throughout the city, not just in downtown, for example, but throughout where people need them. So, I will applaud JCPS in those efforts, because they have truly stepped up in this time. And I will also say that the superintendent, Polio, and Mayor Fisher have done an excellent job of making sure that they are, at least once a week or every week and a half or so, they are getting on a call with the Jefferson County delegation to Frankfurt, so that we're aware of what's going on, so we can check in with them about what they need, because we are often the people that folks go to first, because they can usually reach us, we're more accessible oftentimes. And so they're asking us questions that we need to be able to respond to. So I want to applaud them for that. But Shameka, this is your area right now. I already know, and I'm voting, y'all, still voting.
Okay, I'm glad you're voting. And I will say that as somebody that has been to 17 schools in 3 states and 4 colleges, I have a inside view of JCPS. I also have 3 JCPS graduates, and I have 3 that are currently matriculating through JCPS. And I also have an advanced student, and I have an IEP student. So I'm definitely paying attention to everything that's happening. And I will second what Representative Scott said, is that it is a big, valiant effort that they're giving to make sure people know what's going on, to ask the real questions that need to be happened, and also to take the criticism when it comes. I don't believe that you can live in Jefferson County and not think that JCPS is active and proactive. Are they perfect? No. That's one of the reasons I was trying to run for the school board, is because I want to bring those missing voices of mothers like me, of Black women like me, who are engaged in the community, who are still actively working and have children that are currently enrolled, because I think that we add a voice that isn't often heard. But I do think that they do make attempts to try to be inclusive, to do what they can. I've had to even access the homeless services as a parent, not once but twice, and I know what that's like. And that made a really big difference. And when my girls were seniors and they and juniors, and they were still in high school, and we were transitioning through the homelessness portion of our lives, they were able to do that because of the programs and the resources that were there. So I'm really thankful for a lot of the things that JCPS puts forth. I do think that, yes, when you follow the money and you try to understand who gets contracts, who don't, I think there does need to be a better job at division of those contracts. That it shouldn't be about taking care of your family and friends. It should be about making sure those resources go to really good groups and organizations that are able to do the work but are just lacking the resources. I think we have a lot of great resources. There's a Latanya Bland who has an excellent math program that should be spread out throughout the county, who needs the support, who is working on a math activity bus. There's Ebony Neal Cochran, who homeschools but also wants to open up as a math and science center in the West End that would help our kids. People like that need to be supported. There's a Jocelyn Hall who's working on gardening with another friend in Victory Park to open up more gardens. And these are the kind of people who need to be supported from our JCPS funding to help make that better. Now, as a result of this response, I think it's been good. I mean, I think for me, like, I have 3 kids, and we did get one Chromebook. I know that you checked on us, Representative Scott. Thank you. We finally did get one, but I have 3 kids that would have to share that. Now, and we talk about poverty. Those who are just above the poverty level, feeding their kids 3 times a day is taxing on anybody's budget. I've been to the store. I've been spending the most money on groceries. And so that's a lot. And then here I am, this person in the community, and you might see my name in one of those resource applications because it's expensive to feed the children consistently, and they're eating more meals at home. So I think it's not just that they get the meals from school, because I was growing up, that was one of the places we knew we had a meal coming at. But it's also the fact that none of us, if you talk about that $500, none of us were prepared to be feeding the kids full time like that. Now, when right before spring break or right before summer, we stock up, we get things ready, but then nobody was prepared for this because these monies weren't allocated for, and now they've been redirected. And I know the stimulus money is coming, but if you're really planning, you want to make sure that nothing's cut off, because we know that when the money's coming, all these companies that are saying, oh, it's okay, it won't be okay. They will cut you off. And so LG&E, water, all these folks are going to want the money that they need. So I think as a school, it is our responsibility. I think that's why I believe in public schools. It is our responsibility, and I don't think we should shy away from that and ever doubt that. It is our responsibility to make sure kids are fed, because you learn better when you've eaten. You learn better when you're not focused on my empty stomach or I'm going home not to eat anything. I think I was really heartbroken when it went from 5 days of distribution of meals to 3 days at certain sites. And I understand that nobody was prepared for this, but I think that as long as JCPS is willing to keep taking that criticism, to keep applying and stretching out those resources, to keep the teachers informed and let the teachers give insight, listen to the teachers. I mean, you got teachers, former teachers that are a part of the board, but you still need to listen and hear what they're saying. The teachers that are actually in the classrooms with our students need their voices heard. And so I think as long as they keep doing it, I really respect Superintendent Marty Polo. I think anybody in those positions have to make tough decisions, and we're not going to like everything they do. But I think for the most part, he has the best interest for the students and everyone involved. So for me, I'm willing. I wish they would call me and ask me my opinions on stuff. But I might have to just run.
I asked your opinion.
I know you do. You actually do. I might have to run and get that. But no, I really do think that we need to keep their feet to the fire. That is a thing that's been happening. I remember back when Ann Elmore was on the school board. I remember being in the meetings when Clout was trying to bring restorative justice. And there is no way you could be in Jefferson County and not know that we care about our school system. We care about our public schools. We just need to support them when we need to, and we need to challenge them as well. But yes, they're doing decent. They're doing a good job.
And I'll just add to that the criticism part, because I'm one of those people who I just feel like if we all just go with the flow, whatever the flow may be, we're going to miss those opportunities to, as you said, to criticize, to challenge, to help us to get and do better. So I will say that you're exactly right. JCPS has listened to the feedback. So for example, I represent part of the Russell neighborhood. There was no site in Russell for kids to go pick up meals. And so a really strong advocate in the Russell neighborhood, Jackie Floyd, many of us know her as the mayor of Russell, stayed on JCPS until they opened up a site at Roosevelt Perry Elementary School, which is in District 41 in the Russell neighborhood. And that was so important. And it was an oversight, right? And oversights happen. But if we allow ourselves to say, well, we're in the midst of a pandemic, I'm not going to question, I'm just going to let it go. People doing the best that they can. Then you have kids who have to cross a busy street like Broadway to try to, get something to eat. And that is extremely unsafe. So it is still important to have at least some of us who are out here saying, okay, here's some ways in which we can do better. And I will second that we need Shameka's voice in leadership on our school board, because she's bringing a unique perspective that's both deeply grounded in community and really clear about what it means to be a parent of JCPS students.
I'll just edit that part out so we don't lose our 501c3 status.
Sorry, y'all. That was me. I own all of that.
It's nonpartisan. It's nonpartisan.
I'm in Frankfurt right now, y'all. What did you expect?
But I think I can definitely speak for Louisville Pride in saying that we need more Black women in leadership roles. And I'll just stop there. And now I haven't, crossed any lines. I want to move on. Obviously there's a whole lot of things to talk about. I do want to talk about prisons and people in jail and in prison. One of the places that we're seeing hit really hard are nursing homes, because you have a lot of people who are vulnerable in one place and there's no way to isolate people. There's all sorts of factors there. And prisons are another very similar situation. And that's I'm glad to see, there's some attention to that in the media, probably not as much as there should be. What is the medical care that people are getting in prisons? Is it sufficient? Is it adequate to begin with? And then how are they coping with this situation, and what can be done to make it better?
I guess I'll start this one off. So we're in talks with a lot of community groups and partners all over the state. We know that we do have medical in the prisons, and that they're trying, like the rest of the counties and the cities are seeing, there's not enough testing. So they're testing people as they're symptomatic, and they're isolating them. I just had a call with my brother who's in an Ohio prison, and they know that they're in a petri dish. I mean, people who are incarcerated are not, they're not numb to what's going on. They see that, and so they're trying to take their own precautions. My brother just quit his job cooking in the prison because he saw a lot of things happening that weren't conducive, and he was worried because he's in an older unit of more than 30 men, and then most of them are older than him. He's 41. And he doesn't want to risk bringing something back to them. So he actually quit his cooking job. His time is also short too. He gets out next month, but still that was a really big decision for him. And so I see, and then I wish Savvy was on this call, because Savvy Shabazz, he helps lead All of Us or None, and he's constantly doing peer-to-peer work and talking to people inside out, and we're getting the same reports all over from all the prisons that folks are where folks are talking to people that are in prison and all the different prisons. I know there's a lot of focus on the Green is it the Green River complex, because somebody was out and talking about it, and then there was more voices around it. But we're actually concerned with everybody that's in every prison. We're also concerned with the young people, and Representative Scott can speak on the letter she wrote about our young people that are incarcerated. But yes, they are getting some medical treatment as needed. They are getting some testing. And when I last spoke to the Louisville Metro Jail, people have been tested. There was 26 negative, 3 that were pending. I haven't been updated on what the status is of those folks yet. What we've been doing is trying to continue our work and work remotely as possible to get as many people out as possible, and also having those resources, because there's stipulations on people who are being released. We talked about that quarantine, that impacts the people who are being released from prison. And like you said, just like nursing homes, people cannot quarantine in prison. My brother said even in the hole, there's 3 people in their cell with you. And so it's, it's challenging, and it's something that we're constantly addressing. And I'm on calls every other day to try to make sure folks have what they need. The ACLU, I've been working with Amanda Hall there, and they've been sending letters. So when we get these reports of maybe there's an issue around medical or someone being released, we all jump together, and the ACLU has a really big voice, and they write a letter, and it's been really effective in getting people released or changing the conditions, or even making sure staff has the PPE equipment that they need, because that personal protection equipment is needed for everyone. So yeah, we're concerned just as much as about the staff as we are about the people that's incarcerated. Yes, there's some medical stuff happen. No, there's not enough resources, and there's not enough testing.
Here to all of that, and I'll just lift up a couple of nursing homes that are in District 41 that I've been thinking about. Recently, I've been thinking about all of them because I have several nursing homes in District 41, but Masonic Homes and Trade Note Towers in particular, because they have folks with COVID-19. And so, and Trade Note Towers, more than 20 people, including people who work there. So just really want to lift them up. But also with jails and prisons, just thinking about what Shameka lifted up, we have got to be real honest about the environment that we're forcing people to stay in, that is extremely unhealthy. You're right, the ACLU has been on the front line of this conversation. I wrote a letter to the governor and copied Mayor Fisher about releasing juveniles, right? And that's in response to constituents asking me to try to do something to get kids out of incarceration. So, and interestingly enough, my legislative assistant here in Frankfurt, our legislative assistant for District 41, it seems like at least once a week she's calling to say, you've got a stack of letters here from people who are incarcerated, because they're writing me and asking me to address their various needs, including their health and safety during COVID-19. And y'all, I had to cast another vote, just so you know. That's why I went off camera for a moment.
Well, and I wanted to ask you, while we've got a representative on here, what happened in Wisconsin with the primary election as, is a cause for concern across the country and hopefully across the political spectrum. I think there's, just the way that was all handled was so bad. The primary election in Kentucky has been pushed back to June 23rd, I think. Can you update us, Representative Scott, on, is it going to be mail-in? Are there been any discussions about the general election? What are we going to do to safeguard this very important activity at a time when we all have to stay apart from each other? And I'm particularly concerned since I am the sheriff at precinct M160, so I have to, I'm not sure I want to be out there for 12 hours.
Thank you for that service, Mike. Truly appreciate it. And yes, we all saw what happened in Wisconsin. I actually spoke to folks who live there, and my goodness, having people standing for hours out in the rain. And then what many of us may not have seen is that once you got inside to vote, there would be 100 people in one space. There is no way that they can physically distance 6 feet from one another in that kind of environment. So we didn't get to really see that. And we heard some reports, but not a whole lot, about going back to the issue of disparity, that in the most populous cities in Wisconsin, they had the least amount of polling locations, and they also happened to be the place that had the highest number of Black people and Latinx and Native Indian folks. And so that was a reality they faced in their primary election. For June 23rd in Kentucky, for our primary election, at this point, only the Democratic caucus here in Frankfurt have been talking about what we need to do to make sure that people stay healthy and safe. That includes voting by mail. But there's no movement in that direction. And there has been no expressed interest by the Secretary of State for that to happen. This is for the primary election, June 23rd in Kentucky. We want to make sure that if we do end up having polls open in June and in November, that we keep poll workers like you safe, Mike. And at this point, only our Democratic caucus is publicly having those conversations and listening to people like you about what we can do to protect people when they go and vote. So I'm really concerned that instead what I'm hearing from the Secretary of State are things like purging voter rolls, which we don't have some overwhelming abuse, voter abuse in Kentucky to be purging rolls. And we need to be really mindful about what that means, because we saw in Ohio that purging voter rolls meant that Black folks got removed from the rolls to vote. So those are the kind of things that we have to stay vigilant about. And, you know, I'm extremely disappointed that at this point, for everyone who's listening, for the June 23rd primary, there is no plan in Kentucky to keep people safe, to make sure that they don't have to go to the polls because of the ability to vote by mail. And I'm not sure that the November general election in Kentucky will be much different. So what that means, though, is that you have a responsibility as the voting public to contact your elected officials at the state level, to contact the Secretary of State, to contact the governor, to say, to demand, not just say, demand. You have the right to demand to be protected on election day as a voter and as a poll worker, and demand the ability to vote by mail.
And this might be too deep of a constitutional question, but do you know, like, the decision to go to an all-mail ballot, is that something the governor or the Secretary of State can do, or is that something that the legislature will have to vote on?
That's something that the legislature would need to vote on. One of the things that our Democratic caucus leadership is looking into is, you know, is it something that could be an executive order potentially? But we're not sure because it is the vote. And so we've done a lot to try to protect the vote. And we also don't want to be flippant in this time of COVID-19 to do anything that could have a negative impact in the future. So that could mean a special session. I don't know.
Well, that kind of leads me up to what was going to be my last question here. And this goes into something somebody commented asking about ICE raids, immigration control and enforcement, I guess is what the E stands for. But my last question for both of you all is, you know, this is the situation where individual liberty is being curtailed for the common good, for public health. And for the most part, everybody recognizes that we need to do that. You know, we need to, this is a situation where we all need to make some sacrifices. Is that burden falling equally, or are, you know, when we give up a little bit of our civil liberties, our individual liberties in this time of crisis, is that hitting different people disproportionately?
The answer is yes, definitely. For a lot of reasons, because the way that institutions and systems function in this country. I'm extremely concerned about militarization, over-policing, what that will mean for Black folks and folks who are Latinx. Even the issue around wearing a mask. And, you know, I wore my mask and gloves in today. I mean, there are Black men who've made it very clear that they want to be healthy and safe from COVID-19, but they want to be healthy and safe, which means that for them, wearing a mask could be deadly. And so, you know, those kinds of issues we need to be thinking about. When it comes to people who are immigrants, regardless of their documentation status, just for people to, on the face of it, look at someone as an immigrant and immediately come to judgment about who they are, what they believe in, what they value, is real for people. So some of the issues that have been brought to me are around the state needing to make sure that more of their materials are available in multiple languages. That thank you for providing sign language interpretation. And we got to be mindful of people who, you know, English may be their second language. And so how are they getting information? So those issues are real. There are real concerns about ICE. And ICE shouldn't exist. We need to abolish ICE. And I say that knowing that ICE's office in Jefferson County is located in District 41 downtown. We are separating families, period, is wrong. And in this time of a global pandemic, families need to be together so that they can take care of one another. And it's terrifying to imagine what's happening in these concentration camps where immigrants are being held. My goodness, the conditions in which they're being held are atrocious and unsanitary, unclean, unsafe, and unhealthy. And just as we were talking about nursing homes and jails and prisons, we need to be having that same conversation about these concentration camps or detention camps.
And everything she said, I echo that 3 times. I do want to say, when you talk about people being disproportionate on who's handling this, I still think the brunt of all of this falls on women, especially Black women. A lot of the seasoned Black women I know are poll workers. I, for the first time, was a poll watcher for the Democratic Party this past election cycle, but a lot of the women, they do that. A lot of women who are retired, who are out of work, who already get discriminated against because they're older, don't get the chance to have many opportunities. And so this also takes opportunities away from them, but we definitely want to make sure that they are protected, and because they're carrying the weight, just like families are that are supporting people, loved ones, whether they're incarcerated or not. A lot of this weighs heavy on the women. Even as a married woman, the bulk of the responsibility for our household lays on my head and on my shoulders. And so I know that a lot of women, and I remember being a single mom, how much what that meant. And now we're number 2 with children who have an incarcerated parent. That multiplies the issue even more. And so yes, there's more that can be done. There's more ways. You know, is it Sada or Angela Davis said how you or maybe Nelson Mandela, but how you treat the women and children of a society says a lot about who you are as a country and what your values are. And I think women and children are going to suffer the worst. Already through visitation, over policing, people are still being incarcerated. They're still picking people up on bench warrants. We don't look at non-arrest interactions. We don't look at that enough. And now that more people are at home, there's still people who can't be at home and who are out there and who are being pulled over, who are being arrested just for a custody situation. We had someone that was doing police watch in old Louisville, 6 police cars pulled up just for them having a dispute about exchanging the custody of a child. So imagine coming out the door with your child in your hand and then you got guns pulled on you. So there has to be something better, and people feel like this is a time for people to be more trigger happy and everything. So the worry is out there, especially for men of color, especially for our immigrants and international folks. It's worse. And she is so right about having things that folks can understand, translation service. We already lack enough translation resources in Kentucky. We already lack that. And so it's even worse when you have people who are interdependent on the system. And then even when they go to the courthouse to pay a bail, some people are not even being let in. Some people don't understand that the courthouse is shut down, visitation is shut down. Even though it's video visitation, that's still shut down. And we had even our own Savvy Shabazz, who had a mask on and his PPE on, to go and pay a bail and was stopped at the door. And we had to make some calls to even get him in, and this is somebody that goes in and out of the courthouse every day. And we were worried to send him down there with a mask and PPE on, just to go do his job. And he's already someone who has applied to get his rights restored, to have a pardon. And so, it's just so many layers of things that are happening. We got to keep having these conversations. So thank you for doing this. And we got to keep listening to the voices of the people.
I should unmute before I start speaking. Thank you both for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. There's a lot of stuff we wanted to get to. I wanted to talk a lot more about immigration, but we've been on for an hour. So I think we'll save that for another topic. But thank you all both very much. I think, yeah, I do want to ask you all both kind of as a parting note, is there something good you can share, either a way people can help or some good news or something? We've all got, we've talked about a lot of problems. So, let's put a silver lining on it. But first off, just before we do that, I just want to remind everybody, we'll be back Thursday at 1. We're going to talk about community efforts to donate and make PPE, protective personal equipment. And then I'll be back next Tuesday and Thursday at 1 again. We'll probably cover immigration in one of those. And another topic as well, one of the ones I want to get to eventually is people with disabilities. And then this Friday at 8, we're starting UAW Local 862's Digital Pride, which is going to be a virtual drag show where we won't talk about all sorts of heavy topics. We will have fun and form some of those connections that we're missing right now. But thank you to State Representative Attica Scott for District 41 and Shameka Parrish-Wright, who is an operations manager for the Vail Project. So before we close here, will you all, Representative Scott, will you give us some good news or silver lining to close out on? And then you're going to be next, Shameka.
Thank you so much, Mike, for this invitation. I truly appreciate you and the Louisville Pride Foundation. I look forward to volunteering again with Shameka the next time we're able to have Pride. And I will close with this to say that I'm really, really proud of the way that at least young people that I'm connected to are stepping up in this time and defying the stereotypes about young people and how they're responding to COVID-19. I think that what we have seen in some instances are young people who have extreme privilege. And so that sometimes that extreme privilege can lead you to make decisions that are just based on yourself versus the young people I'm seeing who are thinking about the collective. My son in his early 20s donated to the Restaurant Workers Fund so that other restaurant workers can eat, right, and survive. My daughter is a teenager and gets up and goes to work every single day at her local pharmacy to make sure that y'all have the meds that you need to stay healthy. And so I just really appreciate the two who are in my life, but also the other young people who I've seen who've been sharing good and important information and who've been helping to take care of families, who've been stepping in and helping their siblings with their schoolwork while they're home during this time. And I just want to affirm y'all, applaud y'all, and say thank you.
How am I supposed to follow her? See, I was trying to buzz in before she got in here. But everything that Representative Scott said, and I want to add that I know I'm an oversharer, so I use my social media to share a lot, but she got me on Facebook, so blame her if you see too much posting. But I will say the sharing of information right now is very crucial. Like we spoke about before, there is a digital divide, so don't assume that people know everything. Sometimes people are really getting familiar with video calls and picture messaging and all of that, so stay patient, teach who you can, use this opportunity to connect with other people, and that's what I see a lot of. I want to lift up the Louisville mutual aid groups and all the mutual aid groups that are across the country and across our state. Support them. If the least you can do is look around and gather some items so someone can do a porch pickup, that is huge. That gives back. There's people who are out here delivering meals. Find that, Google it, search it, and it's there, and support what's really, really happening on the ground. Support the youth initiatives that keep our youth busy. If it's TikTok, I've done some TikTok videos with my kids, and there's other opportunities to get them engaged, and they're experiencing something we never experienced. So be patient with them. We were out of school a couple of times because of bad weather, but not like this. And so because it's a different experience, I want to lift up the Urban League as they're holding daily contests for youth to do drawings, to do TikTok videos, and they're giving out cash prizes and gift cards for them to do that. And so sharing the information to me is the most important thing that anyone can do. And I just want to lift up all these groups, the churches who are now having to do something so different, especially the ones with older congregations. This is a time now where we can share, and folks got some time and opportunity to connect. And so using that, and I just want to continue to lift that up. And thank you so much, Mike, for being amazing, making sure we stay involved and keep doing this.
Well, thank you all for sharing all this information and time with us today. It's been very helpful. For everybody who, this will be up on Facebook, it'll be up on our website. We have a COVID-19 page at LouisvillePride.com with resources and information. We've got a link to KentuckianaWorks.org/jobs, has a job board that's updated daily. And if anybody has any resources that you want us to put up there, contact us, let us know. Thank you all very much. Wash your hands and keep 6 feet away from each other.
And Mike, put bailproject.org on there too, on your website. And we have an in-cash bail where we're talking beyond cash bail. So if you put that on there for folks to contact.
Yeah, I'll get that from you and get it up there.
All right.
All right. Thank you all. Bye.